Hello and welcome to the fourth in our video series on faith and work here at St Wilfrid's Church. Our vicar Rob Denton is on holiday this week, so I am stepping into his shoes to ask the questions of Rachel Rudman, who is joining us this week.
Hi.
Rachel is a lady of many talents, so in the first instance maybe you can tell us a little bit about who you are and the various roles you find yourself in.
Absolutely. Okay, so I attend this church with my family, with Matt and my three children, Thomas, Ruth and Esther. So that's one of my hats that I wear as a mum and as part of the congregation here. In terms of my professional role, I counted on a number of hands how many years ago I trained. I trained as an English teacher for secondary teaching 25 years ago. And I worked in a number of schools in and around North Yorkshire and Leeds. Then I took a bit of a career break to have my children. But during that time, it was quite interesting. I was already doing some examining work for AQA, one of the biggest exam groups, exam boards. And during that time, I developed that role a little bit. So I started to do training and I started to take on more responsibility for the examining. And through that, I started working with adults a little bit more and training teachers to teach the A-level specification that I was working on. So from that, I started to think about ways in which I might change direction when I went back to work after having had the children. And since 2013 I've been working at Leeds Trinity University, so just round the ring road, and I've been for 9 years the secondary PGCE English course tutor, which means that I now take responsibility for oversight of the new incoming secondary English teachers who are training in and around in the local schools in the area, and I basically look after them whilst they're on placement. So I go and visit them on placement, I watch them teaching, but I also teach them. So we talk about how to become an effective English teacher as well. So that's where I've got to really with my career. So it's been a kind of circuitous route to where I am, but I really feel like I'm doing the job that plays to my strengths, and I really love it, I really enjoy it, and I really have the satisfaction of each year seeing a new group of teachers going out into the workplace and making a difference in secondary schools.
So you're dealing with a lot of different people and in a quite hands-on role in that you really see how it must be impacting them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
learn. The PGCE year, so the year when you train to teach is notoriously challenging. There's lots to be done, so there are academic assignments to do, there's portfolios to create, but there's also obviously developing teaching and learning how to manage a classroom, how to deal with behaviour management, how to effectively teach to a range of different abilities within one classroom, and that takes quite a lot out of those trainees. So it's really important that they have somebody that they can, usually on a Friday afternoon, they can email or phone and say, Rachel, I've had a bad day, talk me through it, or I've got a job interview, I need to think about how to prepare for a lesson that I've got to teach to a group of students I've never met before in a school I don't know. What do I do? How can you help me? So there are lots of challenges in that year, but I absolutely relish the variety as well. And
that's quite interesting as well, because it sounds like you took a step back to have family, like a almost career break, which has then led to other opportunities, because I'm mindful of certainly those, certainly as a parent myself, that you know, certainly the pressures of starting a family and whatever else, it can,
there are
a pause is interesting in a career because it leads to different things,
where
otherwise you might not
it was a big deal
have
to stop. So I was I had responsibility for a department in a secondary school in inner city Leeds, and I really enjoyed it, but I felt that I was worried about trying to juggle, and we were in a very privileged position that I could take some time out. I did have my role with the exam board, and actually that grew and developed, and I kind of sought out opportunities there. I ended up writing on a textbook that was for the exam board for that specification. So if you look for those opportunities, often they're there, and they were kind of flexible around having the children, and I've got a nice kind of wider supportive family who were able to say, oh, you need to go away for a day to do some training, that's fine, we can kind of oversee and look after the kids for a day. And so there was a flexibility there, and I think that at every point it's about sometimes that leap of faith and trusting in God that actually I'm making the right decision. Is this the right thing to do? Yeah, and it so far it's all kind of worked out.
Okay. Well, talking about God then, how has your faith helped you at work? And
Okay.
what difference does it make?
It does make a big difference. So I think, as I've already mentioned, having a career that moves in a number of different directions does mean that you have to kind of put faith in God that you're making the right decisions, and you have to be very conscious of that, and needing to trust in God that it's the right thing. But also the landscape of teacher education is constantly changing. So there always seems to be challenge. So there's challenge about, you'll have seen in the national headlines about teacher recruitment, that there are issues about getting enough trainee teachers. There are issues about placements and getting placements. There's competition between different teacher training providers. And it is a job where you have trainees who are sometimes anxious, they're facing difficulties within school, and it is possible to get kind of a bit worried and a bit bogged down by it all. But I think my faith has enabled me to say, well, I do my best job, I'm diligent, but actually I have to trust in God and say, I've done everything I can, and I pray that the right thing, and this all resolves itself. And I think that's very much changes your mindset in your workplace, where you think, well, I have to think about the things I can control, but don't worry about all of the other things, because God's got this. And if you have integrity in your work, then hopefully that'll be fine, and God will take care of the rest.
Because I think that's true very often. I think we often feel there's great scarcity in our lives, but obviously the Christian story is really about abundance, and actually sometimes trying to balance those two up to actually have that confidence.
And I think there are pressures. There are pressures within the workplace, and it's about being able to say, well, it's under control. God's in amongst all of this. I think I'm also privileged because I work in Leeds Trinity University. Used to be Trinity and All Saints. It was a Catholic college, as a teacher training college originally, but actually it has a very strong Christian ethos.
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay. How does that
it's a strong
show
Catholic
itself?
well, it's really difficult to actually put your finger on what how it does make a difference. But I've always felt very at home in the environment. There's chapel, there are all of there are services, and when I first worked at the university, we had to have 1 o'clock till 2 o'clock, no teaching, because there was always prayer going on. And actually I think there's an integrity about the place, and people do look after each other. One of the reasons, this is the longest I've ever worked in any place, and I think part of the reason is because I'm surrounded by a group of really wonderful human beings, a lot of whom have a Christian faith.
I was going to ask about that actually, because I think for a lot of people in the workplace, they're not terribly conscious of other people of faith being amongst them or around them. I mean, certainly in my work, I feel like something of a rarity, I suppose. Yeah,
I'd say it's probably kind of, there's a mixture, but certainly I share an office with an amazing woman who plays the organ in her local church, and I think it makes a difference in your interactions. I think there's a fundamental care for each other that you don't necessarily find in every workplace, and I think that there's a Christian underpinning to a lot of the interactions.
Do you find yourself learning from people with different sort of backgrounds and ethoses as well, actually, and maybe their approaches to Christianity? I mean, do you talk about faith in any way at work?
There are 2 or 3 colleagues that we'll openly have conversations about faith with. And that's insightful. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, that is interesting. Well, actually, then the next question: how has work helped you with your faith?
Well,
working
with a group of people who a lot of whom are happy to discuss their faith is obviously a real bonus. I think I'm very conscious that my work feels like faith in action sometimes. So something in education that I'm very conscious of is that notion of social justice, that every child should have an entitlement to a high quality education. And I feel that I can feel that there's a difference being made by those teachers who are going out into sometimes quite challenging schools, quite challenging environments, and they are making a difference to those children's lives. I think that's probably the thing that really strikes me most.
That must be very encouraging. And what about how has church helped with work and faith, and how could church help a little bit more?
Okay, so I think what I really benefit from is a sense of community. I have a wonderful home group which is very supportive. I often think of Sunday as a kind of reset for the week. So sometimes the pressures of the working week, you can kind of almost reset for the week ahead and gain strength and encouragement from worship and from being amongst others who are also worshipping. I help with the children's work and I gain enormous, I don't know, I really enjoy that. And that's a source of joy on a Sunday and through church. And I've really enjoyed working. We had a youth group as well that had older children involved, and I think it's a really important thing. I think probably that's the thing that I feel is something as a church we need to keep working on and keep developing, because those children and young people need to understand the Christian faith, really. So yeah, I think certainly the home group in the middle of the week and the Sunday worship they're good opportunities to reconnect really with faith. I really appreciated the fact that through home groups we looked at the living in love and faith and started to address some of those issues that as a church it's really important that we're starting to think about. But there's always more that can be done. In those respects, certainly in terms of things like environment, they're kind of big things going on in the world around us that I think every church needs to be conscious of and thinking about.
Need to be connected to the wider world.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, that's been really, really interesting actually, and very insightful, and a very different working environment than I think I'm used to, so that's actually been quite a window into your world. I've really enjoyed that. Thanks ever so much, Rachel. We will be back hopefully next week with another video in this series. And until then, wish you all the very best and hope you have a fantastic day. Thank you.